Hi, this is Damien Marie AtHope, and I'm an Axiological Atheist, and I'm here with my guest. Could you please tell us your name and what kind of atheist you are?
My name is Jen, as in Jennifer Horner. I'm just a very strong, logical atheist. That's about the best way for me to describe it. I don't use really any other terminology other than that. I think that just saying that I'm a strong atheist is pretty self-explanatory.
Wonderful. Could you explain what it means for people who may not know what it means to be a strong atheist as opposed to one that is not strong or weak atheist to you?
To me, a strong atheist is someone who, when questioned what your belief is, you tell very directly, I'm an atheist. Okay. You don't hinder words, you don't try to make up excuses, you don't give a long spiel about the reason why you feel the way you do unless asked.
Right.
I've had many people just say, wow, you're just very direct about your belief system. And I was like, well, belief or lack of belief, however you want to define it, I'm just an atheist.
Wonderful. Yeah, I like that about you. It's a good character, I think, that a lot of people should adopt. Just telling it like it is. That's what I try to do.
It got me in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I'll agree. Most of my family has decided to not talk to me because of being an atheist. So,
well, thankfully, I don't have that. I do have family that they don't agree. They don't understand. They are still loving and they still care for me. But I still get the I'll pray for you. Don't you understand that this will cause you to go to hell? That sort of thing, but they don't generally preach too much anymore. Ever since I guess coming out of the closet, so to speak, which there was really no closet for me. Once I made that decision, it was pretty much there it is.
Okay, so were you? You said you became an atheist. When did that happen, and how was your childhood like?
I grew up in a very Christian, Pentecostal Assemblies of God type of family. That has always been there. I mean, I'm sure back generations and generations. But I came from a very loving family. They weren't cruel or anything like that. I mean, my grandmother was always my support mechanism. But it was never, like, forced upon us in a cruel mannerism, which I'm grateful for, because some families do have that. But there was still always you don't mix yokes, you don't go around certain types of people. And we weren't necessarily racist, but yet there was still an element of it there. And I'm mixed, so that always kind of confused me a bit. But
sorry for 1 second. Mix with what? If you're going to bring that up, what mix with?
I am. My mother's side is Irish.
Okay.
And then my father's side is Egyptian and Native American. Sorry, I'm trying to remember it all now. And my grandmother grew up in Hawaii. My dad's mom.
Okay.
So,
well, you're very beautiful, so you're mixed well.
Oh, thank you. Mind you, it's not black, it's not Hispanic. But the point is I'm not white. I'm not, a WASP. I'm not, Anglo. White, Caucasian, completely. So I constantly get what's your nationality? Where are you from? I've been, even at airports, I've had issues with customs because they thought that I was something other than what I was. And as far as when I decided to become atheist or made that decision of that, that final straw, it was probably about 6.5 years ago, almost 7. I had studied religion pretty much all of my adult life. I've been through growing up with religion. It was always read the Bible, read the Bible, read the Bible. And the thing that actually kept coming up in what I read was open your ears, open your eyes, look and listen. And I did. And I researched as much as I could, trying to get to some fashion of truth. And ultimately, that's what made the decision. And people would say, well, have you ever read the Bible? And I went, yeah, that's actually what turned me atheist. And then they're flabbergasted. They don't understand how that could do that to me. And I'm like, have you actually ever read the Bible? I said, or do you only know a few short passages? You only know the things that your preacher taught you, that your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, your grandparents taught you. Because if that's the case, you need to read your Bible.
Right.
You need to actually sit down and compare notes between books and passages and authors. And you also need to know your history. Actually learn the history of religion. Where did it stem from? What was the steps that it took? You know, it's not just the situation of Jesus died on the cross and now everybody's Christian. The book that you read, that you call a Bible, was a collection of works written by several different people, and they were voted upon. This wasn't just something that miraculously happened after Jesus, survived or didn't survive. I said, this actually has a history. I said, King James actually existed. Look up your history. You know, you think you're a Protestant, a Baptist, a Pentecostal, whatever. I said, but do you realize that the book that you actually read at church and at home actually has Catholicism written all over it, the people that you criticize the most? Know your history. And that's the problem, in my opinion, is that people don't know their history. They don't know where this religion stems from, and yet they believe it. And so that's the reason why, and my reasoning that I give to people is that I researched. I looked. I don't have a hatred for God. I just don't believe in him. I don't think he exists. I think man made him up to make sure that they could control their villages, their women, their men, their children, keep an order about things, keep things clean and disease-free, which at that point in time was a necessity. When you can't explain things through science, you use myth. We don't need that anymore. It's harmful.
Yeah, excellent. I agree about people don't read the Bible. In fact, I had read the Bible, and it made me have a few questions, but I was so indoctrinated as a child. It didn't. I was like about 13 years old until I ever watched really TV or listened to the radio, because we weren't allowed to do that because my father was in a religious cult. And we didn't watch movies. We didn't have friends. We didn't play sports. We didn't have a lot of outside influence. And when I read the Bible, I like you said, I did find there was some. My biggest problem was kind of like how Paul didn't seem to match up with what Jesus said, especially about women, because Paul seemed to be like extremely harsh about women can't talk, women can't even ask questions. And then you have Jesus directly talking to women about religion and asking questions, and that didn't make sense to me. How is the these two people that are Paul's supposedly following Jesus, and then Jesus is the person to follow, and yet everybody seems to be listening to Paul and in religion, and not really following like those the people who said those wristbands, whatever. What would Jesus do or whatever.
Right.
I mean, that it made me that was the reading the Bible. That's kind of all I got because I was so indoctrinated. I was like, yeah, they're not really following what Jesus would seem to do as far as behavior. It seemed like most of the religion that I was in, they were following what Paul taught. But when I went to college, then I learned the other part which you were talking about, which was the history. And that actually is what turned me atheist. Learning the history of religion, learning how these books were made, like the fact that Exodus was the first book of the Bible, not Genesis. Genesis was actually written after Exodus. And the 5 books of Moses were not even written by a person named Moses. And even if you read the books, it actually says Moses was a great person in those days. Well, then that means Moses wasn't the one writing the book that you're reading. Critical thinking. Just read what it says. It actually says that this book was not written by him, and yet it's attributed to be written by him. I mean, it just the thing they pointed out. I was like, wow. I was like, how blind was I? And for me, the biggest point was what actually turned me halfway through the class. I had 2 classes. One was on world religions. We learned 10 religions. world religions in 10 weeks. The one thing that was really weird is if you'd asked me to name 10 religions, I couldn't even name 5. I was completely, utterly ignorant. Like you're talking about learning stuff, where religions start. Like I knew they were all wrong because they weren't Christian. But if you asked me what their name was, I couldn't have told you nothing.
Well, and that right there also is a problem because just in one religion, Christianity, you have so many different sects and beliefs and variations. And
Totally.
it's like, I'm sorry, if you want to say your religion is right, your belief system is right, then how can they all be wrong?
I totally agree.
All
In
the
fact,
Catholics are going to hell. All the Catholics are going to hell. Or the Pentecostal are going to hell. It's like, wow, that's a lot of people going to hell and very few going to heaven.
right, exactly. I even to this day, I couldn't tell you that much about what Baptists believe. I don't really know. I mean, I've done a lot more investigation. I still can't tell you all the things about Catholicism because I wasn't raised in it. So I mean, like you said, I mean, it's supposedly. I thought all these people were wrong. I can't even to this day, and I've learned a lot now. Even tell you everything about them. So I know it's just pure ignorance and arrogance that religion has, that it's right without having any information. It's like how they attack science. Like they know nothing, but yet science knows way more. It's ignorant. It's just arrogance.
Well, and that right there I find is bigotry too, because I mean, and hypocrisy, because people that are religious or believe in God, I mean, because a lot of people consider themselves to be Christian or whatever and not be considered religious because they don't believe in the organized religion.
Right.
But my thing is that's great, but you can't have it both ways. You can't criticize science and then utilize science. You can't say, I detest everything that science stands for because there's no God there, and then turn around and want somebody to save your husband, your wife, your child, your grandchild's life. Well, that science is what made that happen. Yeah. That medication you take each and every day. I have in-laws that they're in a semi-cult themselves, and their pastor down in Plano, Texas, actually makes comments about, don't take medicine, it's demonic. And so they don't take medicine. My father-in-law almost had a heart attack, or did have a heart attack. They didn't even take him to the hospital. And so I used the Bible as explanation. I said, Mom, even in the Bible it talks about that God put the earth on it to heal. So even if you believe in God, you can medicine. It just shows the ignorance and stupidity.
Yes, definitely. And dangerous. And how dangerous it is that it makes these wacky beliefs.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I used to be very sexual and masturbate, and I got caught several times with porn and stuff. And my mom, told me that I was going to hell because of it, and I was letting demons into myself. And we'd go around the house and 7 times and anoint the doors and windows with oil so the demons would come in. And I actually, as a child, was terrified that I actually had demons. I mean, it's.
I think so, more so now.
What's that?
They probably think more so now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. When I was, I moved up to Seattle about 6 months ago. And I, for a while, had a girlfriend was almost going to come and live with us. And my mom says, "Well, if you have a girlfriend over there, I'm not coming over there because I'm against you being poly." And I said, "If you're against my life, don't bother coming over at all." I said, "Either you I don't go into your house and tell you to take down the fucking crosses, or I won't come in." I go, your crosses in your house, and you're 41. She has 41 Bibles in her house, on her bookshelves. I'm like, who the fuck needs that many Bibles? It's offensive to me. What the fuck? It's like slathered in ignorance, But I don't come in and talk shit about your Bibles. I just come in and be with you, because I know it's you. When I come to your house, if you pray, I don't join in, but I don't attack you for doing that. I mean, don't think you're going to come in my house and tell me how I'm supposed to live my life.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's one thing that, like I said, I think I don't have that with my family or my husband's family. But I do have every time I talk to my mother-in-law, she's going to pray for us, and she's going to speak to God for us. And my favorite is the reason why we have so many problems. I have so many health issues, and we have so many issues knocking at our door from moment to moment. Is because the devil is causing. I told my husband that makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever. If we were atheists and the devil exists and God exists, then why would the devil be chastising us for that? He would leave us the hell alone. Because he's already won. He doesn't need to give us any problems.
Quit making sense.
Then that's the reason. And that's when. Well, God will protect you. Oh, bullshit. I was Christian for years, and I had just as many health problems. I had just as many problems in my life. It's called life. It has no basis to do with religion whatsoever. Nothing has changed from the moment that I was Christian to not. And she also believes that I'm going to be what saves her son.
You're going to be what now?
I'm going to be what saves her son, brings him back to God. Which is hilarious because I'm not as boisterous about atheism as my husband. My husband is like you. He's on the internet all the time. Yeah. He's constantly writing, and I don't. It's not that I'm not an advocate for atheism, or it's not that I won't proselytize in my own way. If people ask me questions, I'll do the best to answer. Yeah. But I don't go out looking to convert people. I wouldn't have converted if somebody had pushed me into anything, and I don't believe that I should. But if somebody has questions, I'll be more than happy to help them. And that's the type of atheism I am, but my husband very much in your face. But I'm no more or less of an atheist than my husband. As far as my own internal belief system, I don't believe in God any more than he does. And in that aspect, she's a fool. I love my mother-in-law tremendously, but she's still a fool.
Yeah, I don't force anybody. Like some atheists go on Christian pages or people, their friends, their Christian profiles, and attack and berate them or something for their beliefs. I don't do that. I don't go trolling nothing. I just put stuff on my page.
Well, Josh doesn't necessarily do that either, but he tends to get involved in arguments, theological arguments with people. Somebody will post something and he'll go, well, here's this one website, why don't you try to read this? And it'll start an argument. And he's actually just trying to be helpful. I know that because, well, I live with him and he's my husband. But to the outsider, it comes across as pushy and in their face. And they want him to just be quiet and reserved. Yeah. And he won't. Every once in a while, he goes a bit too far, and I have to remind him, honey, that's wrong. You're not making yourself look like a good atheist. You're making yourself out to be the demon that they want you to be. And I said, you're not helping anybody at that point.
No, I'm not quiet. Now, you see my page. I'm not quiet at all. That would never be. And I go out in public too and hold signs and stuff. I'm not. But even when I go in public, I don't go yell at people. I just stand there with a sign.
Right.
And the people usually come to me.
That's one thing that my husband Josh has said, though, that ever since you and I became friends,
yeah,
and I've started posting a lot of your posts, reposting them, he said, you would have never done that before. And I said, well, they're not my words, but they're my feelings. And I said, right. I'm not sitting there writing long spills like he does. I said, but I'm still able, I said, I'm sick and tired of not saying anything. Because I don't want people thinking I'm a pushover or fake or that I don't really feel that way and you're pressuring me into it, because I've actually had that too.
Right.
Oh, well, you just say that you're an atheist because Josh is. My mother actually threw a fit at first and said, like, if Josh turned you into an atheist, and said, have you ever known anybody, any man, woman, or child that's ever been able to push me into anything? I said, I am so hard-headed. I said, God could show up right now at my front doorstep, I'd be like, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
I don't know you. Go away. You know? And that's the other thing that people say, well, what if God does exist? I said, what if he does? He's he's an arrogant, pompous, racist, cruel. I said, even if he did exist, I wouldn't want to worship that. So I said, whether God exists or not, until he can prove to me that there's something other than what's written down in the Bible, I have no desire whatsoever to worship anything like that.
Yeah, well, that's one part of what it means to be an axiological atheist. Axiology is value theory, and it's a little bit different. It really should almost be called axiological anti-theism more than atheism, because it's actually stronger in anti-theism than it is in even than atheism. It sees atheism as just a position that's correct, but not as important. It really value judges what the concept of God would be. Like you said, it sees that nothing is worth worship, because the concept of God is actually not a name. When you say God, you're talking about a title of authority. You're saying
right.
You're saying that some being has power, because if you are powerful and you are a baby, it doesn't make you a god. What makes something a god is the ability to do magical things or to have total sway over your life. Usually, people say you're acting like God because you're the power of life and death. So it's actually more like the threat, like of hell or heaven, that makes something a god, or the power to create the world. So as far as an axiology would be concerned, that an axiological atheist, nothing deserves the title of God to begin with. In other words, nothing, no matter how powerful a being is, it doesn't have the right over your rights.
Well, I told people, I said, if you have to take into like religious belief systems or whatever, I said, if I had to be religious, if I didn't have a choice, that you had to be for whatever reason, I said I would be closer to an old world pagan than I ever would to any monotheist religion. I said I'm more likely to go out and worry about how the world around me works, and see the purpose for the seasons and the procreation and all of that, than I would to ever believe that there's some person or thing that we have to worship.
Right. Yeah. I would agree with that. I'm definitely naturalistic, so it would if I was going to choose a religion, it would have to be naturalistic. And if I had to choose a deity, though, it'd have to be female, because I really do not align really with any of the type of male kind of a thinking. So if a deity was there, it would be the purpose would be to be nurturing and caring and loving, and to me that would be a mother or a female. So.
Well, just as other conversations I've had with other people when they criticize or they ask questions or whatever, and I said, you don't need a God.
Oh yeah, I agree.
One of the reasons why I reposted the thing that you wrote, I think it was yesterday, about the 12-step program that you had been in, and that when you decided you no longer need. I have a very personal close friend. I grew up with him. I was actually related to him through marriage at one point because my mom was married to his uncle. And he, for 10 years now, he's been pretty much clean from drugs. But he had to go into like what is this, the Narcotics Anonymous, NA. And I tried explaining to him before, you don't need it. You don't need it. It's in you, by yourself, your own strength. If you have the strength to do that, you have the strength to do that. It doesn't have anything to do with God. And I reposted it honestly for his own. It's because I know he'll read it. And I think that he keeps asking why God this and why God that. And it's because he doesn't exist. He's not there. That magical power of prayer isn't going to do squat for you, other than make you feel better at the end of the night.
Yeah, well, first on prayer, people can look up, then just put intercessory prayer studies, and online, and prayer has not done nothing but fail. They've done I think it's like 13 or something, or 10 intercessory prayer studies, and they all fail. They all fail miserably. In fact, the I think it was a Templeton study, one of the last ones that was done. I think it's 2012 or 11. I can't remember exactly, but it actually showed that what they did is they had people that were Protestant and people were Catholic, and then people, I think some non-denominational, all praying, like groups of people, all praying for people. And they had 3 categories. 1, the people were not getting prayed for. 2, the people were getting prayed for, but they didn't know. And then 3, the people were getting prayed for, and they knew they were told, you're getting prayed for. And the group that did the worst, they were heart patients, cardiac heart patients. The people that had the most problems were actually the ones that knew they were being prayed for. And they
gave up hope.
Yeah.
Their own self. They figured God was going to save them.
They called it prayer anxiety. I thought that was hilarious. It's the fear that it may not work. It actually put more stress on their heart. Is that not ridiculous? So don't pray. Prayer is actually shown now to cause prayer anxiety. So people think, well, it prays, it makes them feel calm. No, actually it adds more stress in their life, because then they're worried that it's not going to work.
I remember even as a young child where they would, in the church where my grandparents went, they would actually say, okay, well, now everybody needs to come up to the altar and pray for this one person. Let's lay hands on this one person and talk in tongues. And I remember even as a small child, it made me very nervous, very anxious, and especially if they were trying to touch me and pray, it made me I don't like to be touched. I didn't like to be touched then. I don't like to be touched now. Until I know a person, I don't even like you hugging me.
Yeah.
And I can remember sitting in a pew one time next to my grandmother. This one woman starts talking in tongues. And I'm like, that's bullshit. And then this other woman interprets it.
Yeah.
And I looked at my grandmother and I said, Grandma, she's lying. What? She's like, I don't want to hear you say that. But it was true. Even as a young child, and I think I was like 6 or 7 years old, I knew it was bullshit. And I'm like, Grandma, that's not right. And later on that evening, I remember her trying to tell me, well, now, Stacey, because my family calls me by my middle name. And she's like, Stacey, you don't understand how it works yet. She was right, I didn't. And then they later on would send me to church camp every summer, and it was a Assemblies of God, Pentecostal type church camp. And I can remember one of the counselors trying to push me into talking into tongues, and I was like, I'm not doing that. She's like, oh, just start rolling things off your tongue, it'll come. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I said, if it is real, it's going to just come out naturally. It doesn't need to be forced.
Right, you don't need to practice.
Right, exactly. And my thing was, too, as I got older, and I did read the Bible, and I was like, well, the Pentecost was one man talking in tongues, but everybody understood him. There was no interpreter. To me, talking in tongues would mean that all tongues would understand what you were saying because it was a message from God. God would need no interpreter.
Right.
If he was a God and he was speaking through a human, he would need no interpreter. So, I mean, it just seems like a lot of wasted time and energy.
Yeah, it's just more nonsense. Yeah, my last one of my churches that I went to was Assemblies of God, and my dad was in the religious cult, and my mom was an evangelical Pentecostal, speaking in tongues and dancing in the aisle and all that. That was a hard thing for me too, because I just saw the whack jobs. I mean, to do that, it was just like I never and I tried, But like you said, it's like trying. How do you try? I just felt like this is not real. This is I'm not getting. I don't know what you're getting. Different. And of course, I felt guilty. Well, maybe it's the demons in me. Maybe it's my fault that I can't do this. I didn't see it totally the way you did, where it's all them. But then again, I was being made to feel like that it's my fault and everything, that I'm doing stuff that, God's not speaking through me because I'm doing things that are wrong.
Well, that's the thing, though. You see that in all religions. You see that in Judaism. You see it in Islam. You see it in Christianity. It's that fear factor. We install fear into you, make you feel guilty for everything, every thought, every feeling, every action that you have, and then in that ability to cause fear, you gain control.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's so sad about it. And it's not just fear and the control of your life, it's also the control of your money, the control of your property, the control of your children, your assets, your inheritance, everything. I mean, as I told you before previously, I was not only married to a Muslim at one time, though he was non-practicing. I also lived among Muslim people. I've been to countries that were Muslim. I've not lived, but I've been in areas of the world, of the sections, like in London, there's a section that is predominantly Islamic. I've been to North Africa. I've been to Saudi Arabia. There's different places that I've been that I've seen the way these people live. And they're just normal, average people. Yes, you have your fundamentalists, just like you have your fundamentalists in any religion, but they all have the same fear. They all have that same overwhelming desire and feeling that they have to be this certain way or they're going to suffer. And it's so sad.
It is.
And yet they suffer every day because of that. But they feel that someday they're going to make it to heaven and everything will be peaceful. So instead they waste the life that they have being miserable because they don't want to be miserable in eternity.
Right.
I mean, in my theory, like I tried to explain to my mother, I said, okay, Mom, you're afraid of not going to heaven. But yet you continue to make mistake after mistake after mistake in this life, and you make yourself miserable now. I said, you go and you die, there's nobody that's ever come back from death and said, yes, it really exists. I know a lot of people that have died and been saved and brought back, and no one haven't seen shit. I was on life support for 2 weeks, and I actually had people say, well, did you see anything?
Yeah.
No. That's not what they wanted to hear, though. What they wanted to hear was, yes, I saw an angel, or I saw a white light, or I saw, the Jesus standing next to me as I was laying there. I said, no, I saw darkness. I didn't even dream. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear something other than that.
Yeah, I've actually looked at it. I'm one of my books. I'm going to write several books. I have a book almost ready to come out called "The Tree of Lies and Its Hidden Roots: Exposing the Evolution of Religion and Removing the Rationale of Faith." But then my next book after that is going to be called "Religion, Hell No, I'm an Atheist." So my book after that is going to be called "Firebrand Atheist," and then a book after that is going to be called "Axiological Atheist." But then after that one, I already have a bunch of stuff written. I'm going to have a book called Secular Supernaturalism. And it's not promoting supernaturalism. The goal of the book is debunking all the supernatural claims, like mediums, like ghosts, like reincarnation, like karma, and really attacking that stuff. All that paranormal, all that stuff like, belief in ancient aliens, belief in, Bigfoot, all these kind of beliefs that people have. And so I've already done some research before about that. I have like 5 or 6 books on people that had afterlife experiences and reincarnation, all this that they claim. So anyways, one of the funny thing is, like you're talking about people's, that they, there's this one thing that says there's like 20,000 people responded to this, that supposedly had afterlife experiences. And what's funny is there's no religion that says something different than another one. There's people that are atheists that supposedly say they have some kind of experience. What's funny is that there's no uniform. There's the only uniform thing is that people say that they experience meeting people that they already know. Well, sure, it's called your own mind.
Yeah.
so
Hope.
yeah,
There's
yes.
no desire,
Right, you know,
fear,
right.
any of that.
But so it's funny if it was true. I'm just saying that it's funny because to me that debunks it right there. If you really look at if you took an honest look at all the afterlife experiences and you put them together, there is no uniform anything, nothing. If it was true, like you said, if it was true, okay, then everyone would have the same experience. Period. Period. It's like science. In other words, I'm going to try to help the people in the book. If you took all science and you got rid of it, like earth science, you got rid of all earth science, and then you started from scratch, you know what you would end up with? The same shit. You know why? Because it's real. So if you looked twice, if 10 people look, guess what? Dirt's still dirt. You know, a tree, you know, it still has, you know, photosynthesis or whatever. You know, everything is going to end up the same, exactly the same, even if you start all over again. Why? Because it's actually real. It's not in your mind. It's 10 people don't get 10 different answers. But
well, no, that is the point of a scientific theory, experiment, and proof. Because people say, well, you can't really give a fact without this, this, and this. I said, well, when somebody says scientific theory has been proven,
right,
it doesn't mean they're never going to use the word fact.
Yeah.
Because in science, the whole point is to keep testing your theory. In other words, there may be something that somebody else comes along and proves is slightly different. They will always use the word theory. It means something different to a person who just uses it in a layman's sentence of saying, well, that's just my theory. It doesn't mean the same thing, a scientific theory versus just a person's average theory on something.
Right. Well,
and a lot of Christians try to use that in their arguments, and it doesn't work. Because A, they don't know what they're talking about, and B, they don't understand it. You know, it's like, do your research first before you're going to argue with somebody.
Well, no, I agree. I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. The issue also is that science isn't trying to put off a philosophical position to begin with. In other words, like you said about facts, whether or not they say it's a fact, it is a fact. We're the third planet from the sun. I mean, it's not a fucking theory. Even it's a fact. They may, as I agree with you, they may never even say that, but it is an actual fact. We are there. There actually is a sun, you know, out there. There actually is a thing called the day, where the time as the Earth rotates, you know.
Well,
so
that actually goes back into people arguing, you know, well, the scientists just say that the Earth is round. You really don't know that. Well, actually, yeah, we do.
We have pictures.
Well, the Bible says the four corners. Excuse me, hold on a second. The Bible says the four corners. The Quran talks about the four angels on the four corners. And in Judaism, in the book of Moses, the Torah, it says the same thing. So, and I'm like, no, but science has proven that the Earth is not just round and flat, but that it actually does have a globe-like dimension. And I think it's unbelievable that there are still people in this world that don't accept that.
Well, I've seen some stuff online where there's people doubting the moon is real. They think it's a hologram. I mean, people... I swear to God, look it up. It's hilarious. Just look up moon is hologram. I swear, there's videos they're trying to debunk that, and they go, look at the glitch. Look at the... I'm like, it's... people's ability to be ignorant or believe absolutely unfounded bullshit, it surprises me every day. And what's
that's ridiculous.
Seriously, look it up. I laugh because I thought it was. I think I might have put it in my book, or I'm going to put it in one of my books because it's so ridiculous.
My question is, who do they think is creating this hologram?
Some, you know, it's obviously secret organization. That reminds me too of this one guy. I eventually banned him as Christian. He kept, you know, trying to ask me questions and stuff. You know, he's like, well, you know, I like your openness, you know, but I don't like this and that. And he was saying, he was like, well, I think that the government's run by, satanic forces, and the CIA, is in league with, satanic and the devil and stuff. And I told them, okay, let me tell you something right here. Okay, let's just use critical thinking. I mean, I'm not a skeptic. I am a rationalist. I start with facts first, and I only doubt that which is warranted to warrant doubt. In other words, if you say something that is totally ridiculous and doesn't match tangible reality, I will not doubt it until you show me a reason to do that. I always tell people the simplest explanation of that is, if you tell me the planet Pluto is in your pocket, I know I don't have to reserve doubt to that possibility because it does not match the tangible laws of the natural world. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all. I have no doubt. Zero. So when you say things that do not match tangible reality, I do not have doubt. I'm not skeptic. I use philosophical skepticism is what the people that a lot of times are skeptic use. I use methodological skepticism. It's also called scientific skepticism. Anyways, it's a different approach. Its goal is not doubt. Its goal is to remove falsehood to find truth. Its goal is actually finding truth. It's a form of rationalism. But anyways, most people in science actually use that, whether they know that's what they call it or not. Some people that say they're skeptics are actually referring to methodological skepticism if they say I'm looking for truth. If they say we have to reserve doubt, that's actually usually a form of philosophical skepticism, because that's not exactly how methodological would say it. But anyways, the point I'm trying to say is that the people, when they make these claims, are really ridiculous. So he's saying that the government is satanic, right, or secretly satanic. And I told him, if you look at the history, how many Satanists? I said, let's look at the facts. How many Satanists have killed people? Even if every claim is true, let's say that they're sacrificing children. What do they do? 1,000 children? I mean, how many are you really thinking they're? Even if that's true, let's say, how many have Christians killed? You think it's really 1,000? Millions. How about the Islam? The same thing. We're talking about a horrific amount compared. I go, the difference? They don't even hide it. They did the
Inquisition. Well, that goes back to, that also stems into people who try to compare us to Adolf Hitler. I'm like, first off, know your history. Adolf Hitler was not an atheist, he was a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can't use that as your firebrand way of arguing it with us, because you have no basis.
Right. Well, and also the speaking of which, that's to me that's rationalism. Going back to the facts. But their thing too is even people say Stalin. Well, Stalin also killed atheists. It's not like he just killed believers. And in fact, right, he didn't even attack the religious outright until the White War, which is when the Catholics tried to actually take over communism. Once he felt they went to war with him, that's when he said, well, fuck it, and I'm going to kill them now, because now they became a actual threat to communism, not to atheism, but to communism. But he wasn't attacking them beginning because of being religious. He was attacking them because they declared war on him. And
well, it's like I've also told people too, that just because somebody's crazy and claims to be an atheist is no different than a person who's crazy and claims to be irreligious.
Right.
I said that, what is it, 99.1% of people in prison are believe in a God in one fashion or another.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but atheists as a whole are the least likely to go out and commit crime.
Well, even Buddhism is actually higher represented than atheists in prison.
Well, a lot of times, though, with Buddhism, that actually stems people going to prison and then finding Buddhism. They don't actually own Buddhists beforehand.
Well, I'm just making a statement, though. Like you said, though, if atheism was this thing that caused people to be so bad, then there should be a larger portion of people that were atheists.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, so I was just making a comment that people.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with what you said. I do.
Yeah.
But and I'm not saying that I think Buddhism is great or anything, because I've read books about Buddhism. I have a friend that's a Buddhist, and he's not a religious Buddhist. You know, he doesn't believe in a god or anything like that. He's just trying to find his own inner peace. But my thing is, you know, I don't need to do that to find my inner peace. You know, so if that's what helps you, fine, as long as you're harming no one else doing that. And that right there is probably, as I told you before, one of my bigger problems with religion is that you do harm people. You're making judgments on other people before you even know the facts, before you even know what that person's actually going through. You know, whether it's you're burning down a abortion clinic, or you're, you know, protesting somebody, you know, at a school or another church, or some person who just moved in that's been divorced 5 times. I don't, or you're gay or you're lesbian. you don't know enough to criticize those people. You know, and whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, that's your business. But the moment you take your beliefs, your feelings, your thoughts, your philosophies, and you use it to harm another human being, then you're just as guilty or more so than those people. And I hate, and I don't use that word lightly because I never do, I hate those kind of people. Because my philosophy has always been, do unto others as you see fit, as long as you harm, or do as you will, as long as you harm no one else. But the moment that you start harming other people, then we've got a problem.
Yeah, what's so funny...
What your philosophy is, what your religion is, but the moment that your rights, your feelings, impede on somebody else's rights and feelings, we've got a problem. And I've always felt that way, even when I was Christian. Because I don't feel that it's right for me to take away your rights or somebody else's rights because my rights supersede. No, that's bullshit. You have the right to believe however you want, but you keep your beliefs to yourself. You know, if you want to talk about them, that's great. But the moment that you start trying to shovel them down somebody else's throat and tell them that's the way they have to live, then I have a lot of problems with you. And I do, because most religions do that. Most of your religions, they go out and they proselytize, not trying to happily convert people, but they try to convert them with fear and hate and everything else that they can throw at them. And I'm sorry, but I can't agree with that. You can't say that your religion is about peace and love and caring and forgiveness when you cannot do those things in your own world. If you can't go out and be peaceful and be loving and be forgiving, then don't go out. You know, they talk about Jesus especially being this, forgiving person and trying to teach people love and forgiveness, but yet, though they claim to be followers of him, they don't lead those kind of lives. And it aggravates me a lot.
Yeah, and it should, because I agree with you that I mean, I'm a very, very strong anti-religionist, anti-theist. I mean, I don't like anything, but I don't tell other people what to do. My mom said, thank you for not being mean to me. And I was like, it's not nothing special I'm doing for you. I'm not mean to anybody who's religious. I just say that it's wrong. What you're saying is untrue. You're saying pseudoscience, pseudo-history, and pseudo-morality. That's what you're saying. But you're right to say it. You have a right to say it. You have the right to believe it. I agree with you totally. You don't have a right to make it a law. You don't have a right to put your falsehood, in our schools. You don't have the right to force me or anyone else to live to your falsehood. You can believe anything you want.
I agree with you completely on that, especially when it comes to the school situation, and you hear it a lot, especially here in the Midwest, about, well, we can no longer pray in schools. And like my husband says, you can pray in school all you want. Nobody ever told you couldn't pray in school. You just can't force all the different children to pray the way you want them to pray. People say, well, we need God back in school. My answer to that is always, which God? Which religion? Which sect of religion? You're Christian? Great. Not everybody in that school is Christian. Okay, even if you want to go, everybody in that school is Christian. Everybody in that school that's Christian may not believe the same way you do. One may be Catholic, one may be Protestant, Pentecostal, and Baptist, and another one may be a Jew. The point is just because you feel it's right doesn't mean that you should push it on other people. You want your kid to be raised religiously, stick them in a private school. Because at least, especially here in the state of Indiana, you can even get vouchers to do it. You can take that money that the state holds for your kid to go to school and use it to pay to go to a private school. So that way, you're still getting that funding that you're supposed to get for your kid, but you can apply it however you want to. And I have no problems with that, because I would pay for that kid to go to school no matter what with my tax money. Yeah, I firmly believe if you want to stick your child in a Catholic school, go ahead. I personally put my kids in Catholic school. But my reasoning had nothing to do with religion. My reasoning had to do with the only other public school was Worthworth.
Yeah.
So my ex-husband and I put both our kids into private school till 8th grade. But then once they got to that age to where they could go to other public school that wasn't horrible or falling apart, we put them back into public school. But the entire time that they were even in a religious-based school, we both still taught them this isn't necessarily right. There's always falsehood. Look for the truth. And as I told you, my daughter would come home, say, Mom, my religious teacher told me this. Is this right? I went, no. I'd open up Bibles or whatever, and I'd show her, this is what the truth is. This is what she's trying to say. This is what it actually says. I remember my kids when they were Sunday school age, they'd come home and they'd talk about Noah, and how, he tried to get all the people to get on the boat with him, and they told him he was crazy and they wouldn't get on. I went, that's not true. That's not actually what it says in the Bible. So what it actually says in the Bible is that God told Noah it was him, his son, his wife, and his son's wife. And that was it. And nobody else was allowed on that boat.
Right.
And he's like, Mommy, that's mean. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's cruel. It's awful. I said, but according to the Bible, God loved Noah and his family, and that was it. And he was going to start all over again. And even as, like I said, a Christian, I always did research. I always tried to find the truth, and I always knew there was something flawed about the Bible.
Yeah.
And too many people are blind sheep. Just like in the Bible, it says they're sheep and they need a shepherd. Well, that's because you've made them into sheep. You've made them into blind drones of people that will follow you no matter what and believe every word you say. That's how you end up with places like Jim Jones murdering everybody because he didn't want to be brought back in, and they just blindly followed him. And those that didn't follow him, that said, no, I'm not going to drink that Kool-Aid, or I'm not going to inject my child with this, they were killed. They were forced.
Right.
That sounds like religion to me. You won't blindly follow me, then we'll make you follow me.
And it has a long...
like that analogy, but it's the truth. That is what religion is. Jim Jones was the epitome of religion.
Well, I know there's been a long history of murders and torture and forced indoctrination of Christianity and Islam, but and his Hinduism and other. It's like religion has done that a lot. Pagans did that. I mean, there is no shortage of religion forcing belief. None. I mean, it's, like you're talking about. Some people try to say pagans don't do anything. Pagans killed Christians. Did you remember that? I mean, they killed them for believing. I mean, there's a long history of people killing people for having different beliefs. Religion is very good at forcing through actual force and killing, and it's still happening today. Just like the people, the Christians here, like wanting to make laws, like to kill people that are gay, because it's like it's ridiculous. I mean, like you said, abortion clinics. People in religion, they don't. If all religion people did was have the fanatical beliefs they kept to themselves, I wouldn't even have a problem with it. Fuck, be as fanatical as you want. To me, I see it no different than a sports team. I don't like sports. If you want to think football is your whole fucking life, and you're one team, and you scream and holler, and you paint yourself naked, during the freezing ass cold or whatever, fuck, go for it. Be as fanatical and ridiculous as you want. I could care less. It doesn't affect me at all. But the moment that you start hurting people and making laws, that's the problem.
Well, and see, that's the thing that really upsets me in this country with the Christians, is that they think that, we should be allowed to force people to be Christian. It's like, do you not understand that there's a lot of other people in this world that are not actually Christians? That Muslims are not always the enemy, that the radical ones, yeah, they're causing a lot of stink right now. But not any more so than any time in Christianity, they've reared up and done shit just like this. And people in America, honestly, are just flat out lazy. They don't want to do the research. They don't want to understand. Or if they do know, they want to ignore it. They want to pretend like it never happened.
Yeah.
And you start talking about the way they treat gays and lesbians in this country. They take their views in this country and they feel like they can't do anything about it. So then, like you said, they take it to other countries. They go out on missions of mercy. Yeah. Where they go to Africa and stuff like that, and they say, oh, well, if you use a condom, that's a sin. Those condoms don't work. God is the only one that will help you. And then these people proceed to spread AIDS even further and kill many, many, many innocent lives.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And they perpetrate their starvation by doing this, because now you got even more people that are dying and sick that need more food and water, and they don't have it. Why? Because these people get to come back home to their cushy little lives in America. They don't have to live there. They don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. It's just like teaching children abstinence. Only abstinence. That's your only bullshit. Give them a choice, and your teen pregnancy will fall. I was a big advocate here in the state of Indiana for the morning after pill to be allowed for children at, over the counter. And I can remember I walked into a CVS, which is a drugstore here in Indiana.
Yeah, I know it is.
They were supposed to be on the front shelves where even a 15-year-old could get it. It's $50, but if they really needed it, they could get it. And I walked into this CVS, and the law had already passed that they were supposed to have this out. I think it was like a May 1st or something, a couple of years ago. And they didn't have it. And I went right up to the manager, and I said, where is the Plan B?
Yeah.
Where is it? And she says, oh, well, we have it back here. I said, you're going against the law. I said, that is to be out on the front shelf to where anybody can have access to it.
Right.
I said, whether it be a rape victim, a kid that just made a wrong choice, or somebody who had their condom break, whatever the purpose, they are supposed to have access to it. Well,
yep.
What if it gets stolen? I said, put it in a locked box. But I said, you have to have that out on the front shelf now. A week later, it was out there. Because I told her, I said, if you don't get it out, I'm going to start making phone calls.
Good for you.
Well, I'm a very big advocate for that. People say, oh, Planned Parenthood, they're abortion clinics. I said, Planned Parenthood is 95% everything else. They are literally for Planned Parenting. They teach you about abstinence. They teach you about condoms. They give you free birth control. I said, they're there for so many different reasons. If you get pregnant, they'll help you give it up for adoption. They'll help you deliver it. They'll help you get an abortion. It's all of that stuff. I said, what, do you think they're any different than a doctor? I said, if you go into your family doctor and you say, I want an abortion, he's going to send you to an abortion clinic. The same way Planned Parenthood will. I said, oh, well, they're going to wait till these girls are 7 or 8 months pregnant. I said, no, they don't do that. They don't let these girls just sit around and be more and more pregnant before we want to make sure that baby's almost full of birth before we do it. So that's not the case. I said, do your research. I said, you're being ignorant. And I said, you're being stupid because you're not trying to find the information. I said, most abortions are done before the end of the first trimester. I said, and from a personal view of having several miscarriages and a stillbirth, I said, I know what that looks like at 2 months. I know what it looks like at 3 months. Yeah, if you sit there with a magnifying glass and you magnify it over and over again, yeah, you're going to see something. But I said, it looks like something that got cracked from an egg, and there's a tiny little white spot in there. I said, that's it. I said, if you had a period, you would never even notice it. I said, but you want it to be something other than that.
Right.
You want it to be some living, breathing, feeling, natural person. I said, do I agree with late-term abortion? No. I said, because at that point you could just have the child and give it up for adoption. You've already went through everything. I said, but if you're going to have an abortion, you also need to understand the consequences of it. As a woman, yes, most of the time people who have abortions, they regret it. But there are just as many women out there that don't. You know, so and my thing is that's a personal choice. To me, that's no different than a personal choice of a man to go out and have sex with a woman, knowing that he has no condom on or she's not taking birth control. He chooses that, and then he can choose to walk away from her.
Yeah, well, I made the choice to get my tubes tied so I don't ever have to worry about it. That way, if a condom breaks or if I didn't use a condom, it makes no difference at all because I choose not to have children. And that was, like you said, that's a choice that I made. You know, which I think is so funny is they try to force me, you know, to wait or whatever. You know, and I'm like, I don't want it. And they're like, well, you don't have any kids. What if you want it? And I'm like, I don't want it. But so you were talking about too, how the late term. I'm against late term also, except for the fact that if a woman is under some emotional stress and is because like if she's been raped or incest, I think it's always her choice, late term or not. I think it's always because you could be psychologically, you know, traumatized. I think that you should always have that choice. I don't think it should be the common thing. I think it should be taken serious because I think that once the child can actually feel pain, I think that becomes more of an ethical issue of the child's rights. Before that, I don't think it's a child. Before that, you know, when it's like you said, first month, second month. I mean, it's not a child. But I think the other thing too, to me, is a late term abortion. If the mother's life is in danger, I think it's always, no matter if the child is partial coming out, if the mother is going to die, no one has to give their life for the child. I think that they can if they wanted to, but no one should be forced to die to give birth. I just no. Your right because you're already alive supersedes the right of a child that's going to come out.
But see, you were talking about rape, but that's the thing that in the Bible and in the Quran and in the Torah, because the Torah is no more than the five books of Moses. It is okay to rape a woman. It's okay to chastise her afterwards for it. It's okay to force her into marriage. You know, so I mean, ultimately, Christians, Muslims, and Jews are all going to see that as being raped is not an excuse. It's not a reasoning.
Well, I agree. Look at the Ten Commandments. Where does it say thou shalt not rape? It isn't.
Oh, no.
But then again, to me, it's just laws written by men for men. I mean,
absolutely.
And one woman was a property. You know, this is clearly because it says that if a woman's raped, then she has to marry her rapist. Mm-hmm. Nothing more unethical could be said. To say something sickening and disgusting like that. You know, and then like
absolutely, I agree.
I mean,
a man would never want that to be able to happen. No. What if a man rapes another man?
Yep, you have to marry him.
Is that different?
Have to be. So you raped once, then you get to be raped for the rest of your life. Wow, that's ethical.
Isn't that virtually what happens when they marry children?
Yeah.
They marry a 7-year-old girl.
That should be an absolute crime. To me, if they're not the 18, they shouldn't be married.
She's not even old enough to make a decision about it.
It's disgusting to me. But the
reason why they do that though is because it stalls a father's figure. You know, because if she misbehaves, he can discipline her and virtually raise her in a fear environment of what a father would be to a daughter. Only there's sex involved.
Well, true, and I think the other issue is the fact that for some reason, which seems bizarre to me, men like strong men. They idolize. Like I'm a pretty strong guy. Sometimes online people can get confused that because I'm so caring and sensitive, because I'm being genderqueer. I have two sides to me, female and male. So sometimes I can act real female. When I feel real safe, I act real female. When I feel threatened, I act very male. So I'm very fucking tough, and when I need to be. So the point is though, because when I am tough, guys look up to me. Guys think that I'm cool, whatever. They I've never had a problem. Most people, you know, except in high school, have been challenged. But the point is, but when a woman does the same thing, if a woman is strong, somehow that is never good. It's never like, wow, how wonderful she's strong. No, it's I don't understand why guys are so threatened by strong women and so idolize strong men.
No, you and I had that conversation the other day, and my husband and I just had it last night over a mutual friend that he and I have that flat out told me one time that he was scared of me. And he expected it to embarrass me and bring me down in the middle of this group of guys that we were having dinner with. And instead he got a table full of laughter, including me. I laughed right at him. I said, "Are you okay?" And he says, "I'm not joking. You scare me." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way." I said, "But I don't go out of my way to be scary." He goes, "Well, you are." And the person that was most offended was actually my best friend at the time, who was a guy. He disdains him, though, which I don't particularly care too much for him myself, because he is a bigot, and he is a womanizer, and he makes horrible, hellacious comments about women on Facebook, and yet he has a wife and 2 daughters. And I'm sorry, I have no respect for somebody like that.
Yeah.
You know, and my husband grew up with him, and he had older parents. He was one of those oops babies, you know, where you're in your late 40s, early 50s, and you have a child. And so he was raised with this mother that it was always, "Oh, no, don't do that. Oh, no, okay, I'll do that." And my husband has explained to me one time, you know, he went over as a child to spend the night. When they woke up with the mother in the morning, he yelled at his mother, "Mom, go make breakfast now." "Okay, honey." So that's exactly what he expects from a woman.
Yeah.
And so when he deals with somebody like me that's more educated than him and tolerant and everything else, he doesn't know how to handle me. I'm very outspoken and very direct. And as a woman, oh my God, that's just not acceptable. You know, I should be quiet and reserved and wait for my husband to acknowledge me. And that'll never happen. I've never been that person. When I was 18 years old, I wasn't that person, and I'm even more so not that person now.
Yeah.
And like I told you, the French Muslim that I was married to, we were only married for 1.5 years because pretty much right after we got married, and we dated for a while, because I met him in Paris, and we dated for a while, and he was fine. The moment that we got married, though, everything changed. And whether he was a practicing Muslim or not, he still had, I believe, that influence there.
Oh, yeah.
And he was also, I think, schizophrenic. But I can remember it was constantly, from moment to moment, you didn't know what to expect, and he would go to hit me or push me up against the wall, and I would fight back. And I can remember after the divorce, he said, "I would have never expected that from you," because I tore him apart in court. And I said, "Well, you picked the wrong country, and you picked the wrong woman." I said, "You picked a homegrown girl from Indiana that was raised on a farm playing with guys." I said, I was playing football at 12 with a bunch of guys. I said, "I'm not going to take that crap from anybody." And I said, I'd never been in a relationship that was that way. I mean, my first husband, we had problems, but he was never violent or forceful. And my husband now is not. You know, I also think he had Napoleon syndrome too, but that was a whole different situation.
Yeah.
But no, the point is, though, is that men are raised to think that they're supposed to act a certain way. And like I told my husband, I said, I don't believe a man has to be what we see as masculine or feminine. They're just people. Just like women. We're just people. You know, people say, "Oh, you're a feminazi." No, I'm actually not. I believe in human rights. Male and female. A man should not overpower a woman, but a woman shouldn't overpower a man. We should coexist. There's some things that men are good at that women aren't. There's things that women are good at that men aren't. And then sometimes it's individual. I may be good at something that you're not. You may be good at something that I'm not. But another woman or another man may be. It's just an individual thing. And there are physicalities of things that some women can do, but most women can't. There's some things that some men can do, but most men can't because of physical girth, size, hand size, foot size, and strength. I mean, I'm 5'3". I can't reach something that a 6'4" person can. That doesn't have anything to do with me being female. It has to do with the fact that I'm short. Right. My father's 5 foot tall. He had the exact same problem. You know, that right there. I'm talking in the
Yeah, I think you got still. We'll wait for you to come back.
There we go. No.
No.
It started and then it stopped. Hold on. Can you see?
But anyway, so I'll address to what you were talking about. I think that I've heard before people say, well, women are weaker than men. You know, to me, the issue is not about weaker, really, because I mean, I think that equal is really, to me, a behavior. It's not a state of being, because if we're going to classify that you have to be stronger than people that are, let's say, Stephen Hawking's, well, then he's not a man because he's not stronger. I mean, that's just ridiculous that putting it that male and female are stronger or weaker, like you were saying, because you could have the same attributes, male or female. It really doesn't matter. So in our society doesn't classify, you know, things on brute strength. Otherwise, football players would be the most, you know, or whatever, someone like that, or the military would be the highest form of a thing where, you know, we really don't even class men that way. We don't say the best man is this. There's a lot of other attributes that we see as a quality than just purely by strength. But I
have seen that type of what's the word I'm looking for, where you're discriminating against somebody just because of it.
Well,
you know, especially as a woman in management and in powerful positions, I've had a lot of people think that I was just this horrible witch because I was an outspoken female. But if you put those same attributes on a man, they think they have respect for him. They think he's a great leader. Well, what makes the difference? Because I have a vagina? I'm sorry, just because I have a vagina doesn't mean that I need to be any different in my position than the guy next to me.
Well, then I think that we're prone to be bigoted in general, because just like I've had a lot of people tell me that I can't write poetry or something, or I can't be intelligent because I'm big, and because, or I can't be, you know, informed on things, or I don't look informed because I have a red beard, or because, you know, I look more like a biker than I look like a scientist, you know, or someone, you know. It's just I have schooling, so it doesn't, and I've learned a lot and very educated, so it's, you know, so self-educated. It's just people like to be bigoted. So like I said, to me, I think it equals a behavior how we treat people. It's really shouldn't be a class on someone has to fit some kind of a norm or something to be equal. I try to treat everyone equal regardless of what they are, color, sexuality, whether style, whether their height, short. And like you were talking about strong women, I want to go back to that just for a second. So I respect strong women. I like strong women, but I also respect, you know, being who you are. If you're a weak woman, I respect that too. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with being weak. Just like you said, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong about being a strong man. I'm a pretty strong man, and sometimes I can be a weak man. I think that both are fine. Be you. I don't think it's either or pitting something. So, I mean, I like strong women. I like strong men. I like weak men. I like weak women. I really like everybody. You know, be yourself.
Well, and I agree with that, because the other thing is, too, is like I've told people, I said, you know, especially like in my relationship with Josh, because Josh tends to be very passive in like everyday life and personal life, and people think that I'm mean to him. And I'm like, why do you think I'm mean to him? They're like, well, you're this really dominant, outspoken female, and he's very passive and shy. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't see who we are behind closed doors. I said, my husband and I have a very equal relationship. We support each other. We talk things out. I said, yes, there's some things I'm dominant in our relationship. There's things that he's dominant in our relationship. And I said, you see me at work. You see me in certain situations where, yeah, I'm going to be outspoken, or I'm going to be the dominant person or the leader of the group. I said, but when I'm at home, I said, I can be very passive and very, I don't see things as strong and weak as much as strong and passive, as in a personality. You have a strong personality, you have a passive personality. It doesn't make you weak. I've seen people that are very quiet and very shy, very reserved, be some of the strongest people I've ever known. How you approach the world does not necessarily make you weak or strong. But some things just need to be done, and some people are more likely to take that first step to get it done, where others may wait to be told that they need to do something. You have leaders and followers. It doesn't make either right or wrong.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's. I try to tell people too. I am a leader. I mean, I'm a very strong personality, and I'm very kind. I mean, so like you said, I don't ever see myself as passive. I'm very strong. I'm very assertive. There's nothing about me that's passive, but I'm very kind. It's very thoughtful, very caring, very, very sweet-natured. Although I'm very powerful. There's never a point of who I am that anyone who ever meets me would say that I'm passive. I'm very kind and very thoughtful and loving, but I'm very powerful. It's just who I am. I'm very, very outgoing, very, very commanding of my personality. But that doesn't mean I can't be, like you're saying. I don't think it's either or, because I can also be very, like I said, very demanding of stuff and very, very kind at the same time. So
well, I agree with that, because that's the other thing I've tried to explain to people is that just because I'm a powerful person or a leader and I take command does not mean that I don't still have caring and compassion and loving parts of my personality. Because I'll also be the first person to let you sit down across from me and just spit out all your frustration and not judge you for it.
Right.
And a lot of times you find that the more passive people are actually the more judgmental, because they are looking for that right person to be around, that leader or whatever. And they're a lot of times your more dominant, outspoken, honest people are the ones that you actually want to be around, because they're going to tell you how they feel. They're going to tell you what they think. They're not going to lie to you. They're not going to scheme behind your back. They're not going to try to hide things from you. They're just going to tell you exactly what they think, hell or high water. And, and that's the thing I don't think a lot of people realize. I would rather have myself surrounded by nothing but honest, direct people than somebody that's cowering in a corner and acting like they're all shy, but they're actually trying to figure out a way to stab you in the back.
Right. You're saying the same thing that I'm saying, that you could be both things. It's not like you have to choose one and then there you go.
No, I agree. And I've actually had arguments with feminists, or what we categorize as feminazi, because I know very many feminists that are perfectly fine.
Well, so you said I'm a feminist. I'm an anarcho-feminist, to be particular. I believe in anarchism, the no hierarchies, is social order, and thus because of that I'm against patriarchy, and I feel like for me feminism is a part of my anarchism. But go ahead.
Well, if you're a humanist, it's hard not to be a feminist.
I'm a humanist also, yes.
Well, that's what I mean. It's kind of hard to be one and not the other. But the feminazi, the person that they're ultimately man-haters, I have problems with that. And I've argued with them that, yes, I agree that if a woman's able to do the same job a man is, they should get paid the same, as long as the education, the experience, and the qualifications are the same, and they can do the job the same way. Why would they not be paid the same? But when it comes to criticizing women who want to stay at home, who want to breastfeed their children and not go out and get a job and let their husband work, why are you criticizing them? Why are you trying to force your opinions on them? You say you want women to have rights. Well, they're ultimately choosing they're using their right.
Absolutely.
Their right is for choice.
Absolutely.
Even if the choice isn't one that you would take. And they criticize these poor women, and they criticize these poor men. And I'm like, that's not ultimately what feminism was about to begin with.
Right, yeah.
It was about giving us the right to choose our lives.
Yeah,
about giving us the equal freedom that a man has. When you go beyond that, putting us above men is not any better than men above women. Men should not become those dogs at women's feet. I don't want a matriarchal system any more than I want a patriarchal system. I want equalism. I want humanism.
Right.
I want people to be treated as human. Male, female, black, white shouldn't make a difference. Gay, lesbian, straight, I don't care. Are you a human? Yes, you're a human. You should have the inevitable right that everybody else does. So, and a lot of people just don't see that. They think that if you're a feminist, you have to be a man-hater, or, you know, you have to be down on these women who choose to be other than strong women. And I'm sorry, I'm against that 100%.
Right. Yes, I would just say personally, I'm against the term feminazi because I do not believe that they're being feminists. They're being misogynists, or misandrists. They're pushing. Yeah. So they're not actually pushing feminism. So I deny them the right to use that word, and I don't. You can use it if you want, but for me, I never say feminazi because that would be that somehow there's a branch of feminism that I agree is anti-men. I don't agree that. I think that you're not using. That's like if someone says, "Well, I'm an atheist, but I believe in God." Well, guess what, sunshine? You're not a fucking atheist.
You're not an atheist.
So. To me, you could be a religious atheist. In other words, that you do religious acts, but you don't believe in God. Okay, I don't like that, but I'll agree that that's possible. But you cannot be someone who believes in God and an atheist. That is an impossibility. So I do not believe that you can be a feminist and be against all rights of everyone. So the moment that you say that women have to have rights over men, or men are somehow not equal to women, you're no longer, as far as I'm concerned, classifying feminism. You're saying something else. And so I deny that they're right, just like I would tell people that you can't say you believe in God and you're an atheist. I don't care what the fuck you think you say. You don't have a right to say that. You are wrong.
I agree.
So I'm saying for me, so to me, I don't even justify or acknowledge calling them a feminazi, because that would be that I'm acknowledging that they're actually using feminism. Fuck no, I'm just saying for me.
Some people, including my husband and I, have used the word or the term feminazi is because they claim themselves. They go out using the feminist movement, and it's a good way of separating them from the fold. You're saying, yes, you claim to be a feminist. Mm-hmm. But however, you're a bit more like a Nazi.
Right, but so my point, do you know that 20% of, they did a Pew poll, that 20% of people that say they're an atheist believe in some kind of a spiritual God being? 20%. That they this thing.
Not atheist.
I know, they're not atheists. That's what I'm saying. See, but what you just said is how I feel about feminism. You are not using the word correctly. So I'm just saying for me, I don't go, oh well, you're being a God atheist. I just go, you're not atheist. Stop using that word, because that's not what you are. So I've told, because I'm an anarcho-feminist, so I'm for feminism, and I've had before I was talking to this lesbian, and she said that she's against all heterosexual porn, only gay porn, because all heterosexual porn inherently. I think she said, I can't remember the word she said, but at the top of my head now, but somehow it like defames women, or it's like rape, or it's bad or something. I can't remember what, I don't want to quote because I don't know what she said. I don't remember now, but it was negative. But gay porn or lesbian porn, that's okay, because women can't subjugate or hurt women, and I'm like,
that's bullshit.
That is fucking nonsense.
I've seen other women treat women like crap. I've been in the gay and lesbian world since I was 18 years old.
And so I'm just saying, for me...
So, I mean, I've dated women, I've loved women, I've hated women. And I've seen women beat on women. I've seen them treat them like crap. I've seen them mentally manipulate them and make them feel guilty. No different than a man would.
Right. Well, so I'm just saying, so to me, I told her, what you're saying is not feminism. Because I believe that if you say that a woman, it's like, to me, prostitution should be legal. If you say a woman owns her body, then she owns her body. Whether she wants to be not sexual, she wants to be extra sexual, have someone pay for sexual, she wants to do porn, she wants to be celibate, wants to have an abortion, she doesn't want to have an abortion, whatever the fuck she wants to be in the business, or she wants to stay home and raise kids. Whatever she wants. I support her rights to be her, just like I would support a man's rights. And in fact, I don't even think we have a right to feel like we're supporting them. They're people. We should already be supporting them. Why are we not supporting them?
Yeah, well, but my thing is my husband works. I'm currently not working. I'm healing over one surgery and getting ready to go into another one. And yet I have a good close friend that lives in Indianapolis who's a doctor, and she supports her husband. He's an at-home husband. We have different equatable versions of our lives.
Yeah. My wife supports me.
One is any righter than the other. Our living dynamics is not correct, and theirs is wrong, and vice versa.
Like I said,
them, yes. Are they happy the way they are? Yeah. Then who the hell am I to criticize? And vice versa. I would be pissed as hell if somebody said, "Well, that's not right that he's supporting you. You should be out working." That was a decision between him and I, not between him, I, and you.
Right.
We had to think about financially, physically, how it was going to affect me. I've needed to have these surgeries for 6 years. This was an opportunity. Financially, yeah, we're tight, but we can get by. But that's our business. Yep. It's not anybody else's. And I flat out told people to mind their own business before when they tried to tell me things. When my first husband and I were married, I didn't work. I breastfed my daughter. And then I got to a point I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to go back to work. I've always been a worker. Don't criticize somebody when you are not in their shoes. You don't know everything. And if it's their choice, male or female, it doesn't make a difference. It's their choice. Their choice, their consequences. Now, if their consequences start affecting you personally, like you have a stay-at-home mom and a husband that works and they can't afford to make their bills, and you're their mom, their dad, their brother, their sister, and you constantly have to pay their bills, yeah, you've got a little bit more of a reason to say something. But at that point, it's not you're criticizing them because one is male and one is female. It's that their choices are impeding upon your life. Now you have a reason to criticize. But beyond that, you don't. In my opinion, I don't see how another person has the right to criticize somebody else's lifestyle when they don't live in it.
Yeah,
and it is good.
I would say my wife supports me, but right now I'm writing my books, and probably pretty soon I'll be supporting her, with my writing, because it's very likely that I'm going to be able to financially become more secure because of my writing, but right now she's supporting me, and she believes in me, and I think I totally agree with you. It doesn't matter, but I'm not for gender roles anyways. To me, there's no have-tos. People can do what they want. I agree with you. It's their people's lives, man. I mean, I don't run. In fact, like I say all kinds of things of how I am with my gender and how I believe about sexuality and how I believe, about atheism. I don't tell anyone else to follow my beliefs. I just explain how I believe, and how I see it. I don't.
I've been personally criticized because I'm bisexual, both by the straight and the gay community. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to get something in a darker room.
Yeah, well, I'm for all people's right to define their sexuality and gender as they see fit, whatever it is. I mean, it's like to me, if someone said that they only like, people with a mole on their cheek, and that's the only people that they're attracted to sexually, I cool, whatever. I mean, what other people like, they have the right to like or not like anything they want. That's like, I know, if people like to, not like things they don't understand, people like to not like things that they don't think is what they are, or they're threatened by it. So I know it's ridiculous.
Well, like with me personally, being bisexual, I love men and women, and I'm attracted to both pretty much equally.
Yeah.
Now I have said that had I not been pressured to be straight, to be, heterosexual when I was younger, I'd probably actually just be lesbian. But it's like coffee or hard liquor, you acquire a taste, and once you've got it, you can't really,
Yeah.
I've acquired a taste for men. And I can't really not have that now, And a lot of people don't understand that, is that, honestly, naturally, I've always been attracted to women. I was taught to be attracted to men. And most lesbians see that as just absolutely horrific. Well, you're just really lesbian, and you've just been taught you just need to quit that. And I'm like, no. It's like being told, after you've learned to love scotch, that you should quit drinking scotch because it's just not right. But it's okay to drink beer. Well, I'm sorry, if you like beer and scotch, drink both.
Yeah.
And that's who I am. I'm a scotch beer kind of gal, The point is that when you like something, you like something. You love something, you love something. And as long as it's not harming someone else, nobody else should have the right to criticize them. You don't want to be lesbian, don't be lesbian. You don't want to be gay, don't be gay. You want to be heterosexual, be heterosexual. But don't take it upon yourself to think that your choices should impede upon other people's because of your religious beliefs. And it pisses me off because a lot of Christians that feel that way don't seem to understand that a lot of gays and lesbians actually do believe in religion. I know many lesbians and gay men that have been Christian.
No, we lost you for a second. Yeah, I know what you're saying. That I have gone actually, and when I was in California this last year, I went in to the Pride parade in Santa Ana, California, and I had a booth for my group HARP, which is Humanism, Rationalism, Atheism, and Philosophy, which I have a meetup group that I now moved to Seattle, and I also have a Facebook group that has from all over the world, but in it. But I went and did outreach at the Pride Parade, and I was the only atheist, and there was like seven churches, and I was the only person who had a booth for atheism, and I thought that was pretty wild, especially California. But it was more amazing to me is how many churches. I expected maybe like one or two, or people picketing it, which there was some people picketing outside, that are anti-gay, but I was surprised how many churches there were, and I was also surprised at how many people that came up and didn't even know what atheists were. Here these people are LGBT, and they had never heard of anything. Some thought I was a Satanist, and other ones, and some thought I still believed in some kind of a god. I was like, no.
No, that's agnostic.
I was like, no, I don't believe in any kind of god. But it was interesting. But I really, was able to talk and help people. I mean, my point of doing stuff like that is not really to force, atheism on anybody. It's that a lot of people don't know what atheism is. They don't know that they have a choice to choose to analyze the facts. They think they just have to believe. Like they thought that I was an atheist, I had to somehow still believe in God. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. It's nonsense. And also that there's the people were so happy that an atheist went there because they thought that there wasn't any atheist that cared about gay people. I mean, they actually asked me, what does an atheist think about gay people? And I said, well, for me as an atheist, that's like asking me, what does an atheist think about heterosexual people? They're sexual? What are you asking me? I mean, if you're asking, do I have some kind of preconceived bigoted beliefs? Well, I don't have a God to tell me that anything is wrong. So all I do is it would be, psychology and science, and psychology says it's a normal aspect of the human nature, and biology would say that it's found in all, a million animals, and practically almost all animals, that have sex have exhibited some sort of same-sex behavior.
Well, even in human history, it's been around virtually from the very beginning.
Right.
All written history of humans show homosexual activity. The Grecians, the Persians, the Italians, The Egyptians all show history with homosexuality. Even the Jews and the Christians show it. You know, I'm sorry, it's always been there.
Right.
And like I said, even within the Bible, the only thing that the Bible actually criticizes when it comes to homosexuality is sex between two men. Why? Because women were kept in groups. The men would marry many women, and women would live together almost in communes in marriages. Lesbianism was normal because there was no penetration, they couldn't impregnate. The reason why homosexuality for men was illegal was because of disease at that time. There was no way for them to stay clean. And they needed to propagate, so you had to have a wife. They needed those.
Right. As I agree. I think it might be disease, but I think it's also spilling the seed, that they thought that the man's sperm needed to be impregnating women. So if you're wasting, like jacking off is bad because you're wasting your sperm. You should be sperming inside of a woman. And if you're having sex with a man, you're wasting your sperm by putting it in a man who cannot get pregnant. So yeah, I think that's another issue.
Even in Grecian times, you saw that too, where the men would be married to wives, but then they would have homosexual acts outside of that with their friends.
Right.
So
I was going to ask you. So have you, as a woman, have you felt like that you're treated differently in the atheist movement?
I think that a lot of times, if I am treated any differently, it's shock. And or they think that I'm being pressured into atheism through my husband. You know, that he's this domineering figure in my life that makes me live that way. Like you see in a lot of religious homes where the man is the domineering religious figure head. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. My husband and I are equals in our opinions and our views politically and otherwise. You know, my husband and I don't agree on every aspect politically, but we both see ourselves as having equal rights to feel and believe however we want. And it is no different religiously. I don't believe that had I not been an atheist already, we would have actually gotten together, though. Because my husband was completely against religion at the point when we first started dating, and I don't think he would have actually been with a woman that was religious.
Right.
So I think that's why we worked out. But I was already religious or anti-religion before he and I got together.
That's good. Well, I do have another interview in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I saw the text. You accidentally put it to me.
I said to you? Oh. He was trying to tell me that you know when he's ready. I'm like, yeah, well, you know.
Okay.
I'm still doing the interview. So the point is that I need to wrap it up. But I wanted to say, is there anything else that you wanted to say real quick, or anything you wanted to ask me?
No, I think I pretty much covered everything we've talked about before. I mean, sure, there's something out there, but I can't pull it to memory right at the moment. So, but good luck with your other interviews.
Yes, thank you. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you when I get into Indiana.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
All right.
Take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.